So I wanted to just start out with one of the earliest known images of anywhere in Sauk County. Somebody has inscribed the date on this one, 1860, Prairie du Sac, from the Dane County side looking towards the north and west, and the village of Prairie du Sac on the other side. However, talking with Jack today, I feel that this is a glass plate picture of a picture. They had the 1860 print, and then at some point around the turn of the century, somebody took a picture of it with a glass plate camera. That's how they scratched the name into the negative, and I don't think they had all rights reserved in 1860. But fortunately somebody did that because we might not have this image at all. And one more from the opposite direction, from the prairie side looking south and east over to Dane County. And does anybody recognize what that building is right there? Willersheim Winery. This is the old stone building there, and I think that's the house. The house was built later, so that's an earlier structure there. So, and just for point of reference, here's what that looks like today. So it looks more like the Pioneer saw than that old photo. So, all right. So we're going to talk more about picture taking about 30, 40 years after that 1860 picture was taken. That would have been a very cumbersome process back then. A big, heavy camera, probably a wet plate negative, and was a lot of work to take a picture like that. But 30, 40 years later, things had really come along, and it was a much more easy for people to get into picture taking. So here's a page from the 1902 Sears catalog, and there was a couple ways to take a photo around that time. You could have a film camera, much like the film that many of us remember. At the top there, a preloaded camera box that you would buy and then take all the pictures, some at as many as 100 places for a picture, enough film for 100 pictures, and then you would send the whole contraption into the company to be developed, and then they would send it back to you preloaded again if you wanted with your printed pictures. The other option was more at the bottom with a glass plate negative outfit, and you could even get the chemicals and whatnot to develop them yourself. And about $12 in 1902 was equivalent to about $440 today. So it was not for everybody, but it was definitely far more accessible. The deluxe outfit from Sears at the time was the $23.37 outfit that came with everything you see here, including the kitchen knives, and it had the tripod, the camera, all the dark room equipment, the chemicals, everything that could probably kill you on the bottom right to develop your pictures, and that outfit today would be around $857. I think it came with 12 glass plate negatives, and then you would have to buy more as you went along, and later Jack will show us some of that at the end. So here's probably what our two subjects, our two photographers that we'll talk about tonight, similar to what they would have used, a folding camera. Jack has one on display, which we'll look at the end. Just like it says, it folded up, quite handy and convenient, and you would slip the glass slides in one at a time and take your pictures. And here's a picture of some unknown gentleman with one of those cameras. So definitely portable, but still you had to be careful with these pieces of equipment. And here's a color photo of a real one. And again, Jack has brought us one from right around the same period. And as I mentioned, not sure how the two gentlemen that we'll talk about tonight had theirs developed or printed, but probably did it themselves, and you could buy all that you needed to do that. So we've all heard, we've all seen how people don't smile in these photos, and that started from the advent of picture taking in the mid-1800s when it could take minutes to expose a picture, so you had to sit very still. By the turn of the century, it was down to a second, or a couple of seconds, but you can see that it didn't take much for somebody to screw up, and then we'll see sometimes how they use that to their advantage. But and you never knew until you got the picture developed what had happened. However, in this instance, here we have one that was ruined, and it may have been a misfire by the cameraman, because we have another image that everybody is just fine and it's a little more centered. So not sure what happened there. Either knew that somebody had moved or just took one by accident. So we can see a little bit here on the edges some of the deterioration that happens with glass plate negatives. It's amazing some of these collections have survived. They're stored in attics and basements and inhospitable places, and here's what can really happen with some of these images. So we're fortunate that the ones that we're going to see tonight, for the most part, are well intact. So with that, we want to get to our first photographer. His name was Christian C. Steuber, or Steuber, excuse me. Steuber. Joan Call is here. She's a Steuber. This was like your, oh goodness, great uncle, I think. And a picture of some glass negatives that are not his. And Christian Steuber was usually, all those gentlemen back then were known by their initials. So C.C. Steuber was born in 1855 in Sauk County. And he married a woman named Isabel Bergen around 1881. She was just a couple years younger than himself. So here's a picture that he took of himself. He was a very wealthy farmer on the Sauk Prairie, eventually amassing well over 1,200 acres. He was the largest landowner in southern Sauk County at one time. And that was a lot to manage, but he apparently had a little extra cash and a little extra time to get into photography. And I will turn it over to Jack to talk about his family that we see in this glass negative.
Can everybody hear me on this? Okay, good. Yes, this is C.C. Steuber here is to the far left, and then the young woman in front is Mamie, their daughter, his wife Isabella, and then the gentleman looking that way is Edwin, and Alex is the young man in front. And this was probably taken in their house, so.
Right, and pay attention to Mamie's dress. We're going to see that again and again, and it's a great way to identify her. And Jack, you can kind of tell, these were some glass plates negatives that were kind of all over the Tripp Museum. When
the Tripp Museum used to be the Tripp Memorial Library in Prairie du Sac. And we're pretty sure what happened, that over the years, probably literally about 50, 60 years worth, people literally just brought in their glass plate negatives for safekeeping. There really was no historical society building at that time. So when I got there in 2009, prior to me, Verlin Miller, who's at the Badger History Group, he was in there, and he noticed those first. They were in paper bags, they were in shoe boxes, they were alone, some of them were in these really kind of neat looking glass plate negative cardboard holders. So they were upstairs, downstairs, and all over the place. And so as time went on in 2009, 10, 11, we started collecting them and literally just put them right out here on a table. And Verlin came in one day, probably around 2011, and kind of spurred me on and a couple of other people to getting those things scanned. So we bought a pretty kind of an interesting, unique type of a scanner that cost about $700. But the neat part about this type of a scanner is instead of having just your reflective bed that opens up like this, it actually has a drawer that pulls out below that. When you pull out that drawer, the light flips around, comes actually down, so it comes light comes right through the negative itself. This can be with film too, but this is glass plate. Instead of going up like that and having to go through the glass reflective bed. So it's a special camera that has worked wonderful for us, and it's scanned probably over 1,300 negatives in its time period. A little funny thing, the young man, now we don't know who these people are when we first started out. We don't know them. Verlin sort of knew them, I didn't, but I didn't know anybody from Adam. The young man there, we designated him as unibrow because he had one, looked like us, like one eyebrow. I mean, this is how we started out, not knowing people, but as time goes on, we start to get names and familiar faces. We literally watch these families grow up, which I thought was kind of a fun.
And note how they're posed too. You know, there's clearly, you kids look this way, mom and dad are gonna look that way, and watch, there's a few pictures of Isabel, and she's always looking off to that direction for some reason. So, all right, let's go on. So here's another posed picture of the kids.
The same family, obviously.
And another one.
So this is Mimi on the left, and that is Alex on the, sorry, is that Edwin or Ellen? I think that's Alex, actually.
Yeah, I think it's Alex.
It's hard to see that hat up there, but he was a member of what was called the PDS Brass Band. So that was a group of people that played horn, clarinet, I think different instruments like that. No drums, actually.
Now the other thing to note here, if you hadn't noticed already, this is a split negative. So he carefully covered one half of the negative to take Mamie's photo, and then exposed the other half to take Alex's photo and get them on the same plate, trying to, you know, conserve the amount of plates that were being used. So that's interesting. We'll see that again a little bit later. Now the Steuber family lived on what is now Prairie Street or Highway PF, coming into Sauk from Highway 12. And we'll show you where that is in a minute. But this was their, you know, somewhat modest house. They probably could have afforded a much bigger house, but they were fine with this. And you'll see where the money went into the farm. But a nice, crisp, neat-looking German farm. Here's a little farther out shot from the west looking east. Prairie Street would be on the right side. Notice the size of the farm buildings there. And it was around until at least the 50s. The 1937 aerial photography for the state of Wisconsin shows the Steuber farm way outside of town, or at least a mile outside of Prairie du Sac on what is now Prairie Street. And here's a modern overlay of what that is today. And if you're familiar with that area, it's kind of near where you turn off to go to St. Vinny's, and this is where the Steuber farm once was. All right, so a few more photos of the farm. Of course, he was into all of the best equipment. So here we're loading hay into the hay mow with a belt-driven elevator, and you see one of two windmills there, and a little bit of the house on the left side.
So Paul,
Oops.
back that up just one, yeah. Way over here, you can see it's kind of I think it's a water tank, and that's the steam engine, steam tractor. So they're running that long belt off of that into.
I would say that's a gas engine.
A gas engine, okay.
Probably 16 horses. So.
Okay.
Looks like a guy's arm that caught on the right end.
So obviously not OSHA approved in the sense of
No.
stay 10 feet away, huh?
Maybe a lawsuit.
Okay. All right, and out here, a picture out on the prairie, Sauk Prairie, looking towards the east. That's Dane County in the far background across the river. Again, PF would be to the right, just beyond the farm buildings. And so we're into some cattle raising as well, quite a few cows in that picture. And don't know exactly where this was, but this is a close approximation to where that scene was set over 100 years ago. So again, it was a portable camera, but to take the time to take this out into the field and keep it clean and whatever was something amazing. And here's a picture of several teams, 4 horses each, with a 3-wheeled plow doing the plowing. And it's one of the few times that C.C. Steuber wrote, tried to scratch something onto the plate, and it says plowing PDS. The other end of things, that was the spring season. Now we're in the fall season. So again, several teams, this time only 3 horses required since it's much lighter work. and we are cutting and binding straw.
And
into
that's
little
going to be
bundles.
CC right there. With another distinction besides his mustache was his huge hat all the time.
And this would have been a team effort. This wasn't just staged. This was happening for real, where several farmers would get together and then do the work on each other's fields in cooperation with each other, so it went much faster. And another view, we think this is Alex.
Alex, right.
On the binder. What looks like a scratch in the negative is actually a giant pole, wooden pole, used to tell the horses what you wanted to be done. And you'll see that again. Now, what do you notice here? Who's driving these outfits? This definitely was staged. The men, although we'll talk about women doing this kind of work. It was not unheard of, but not in your Sunday best white blouse and hat. Again, the sticks, these are not scratches or cracks in the negative. These are the sticks that they were using to prod the horses. And again, a rare, not sure if he was trying to make real photo postcards out of these, why he was taking the time to scratch in the names. And that, of course, had to be done backwards on the negative. So you had to be real careful doing that. All right, here's another.
If it's white here, he would have written on with a pen.
Yeah. Jack found this one just recently and threw it in. Just again to show that if you weren't sitting still, this is what happened. But also to show you the scope of the Steuber farm in the background. Really quite a large operation, 2 windmills and very large barns and buildings. Then you can see the straw being put into hillocks and stuff.
If you look at, and of course, if you look up close, that is actually Mamie now. So
Okay.
we do know that women were working in the fields, different between that other picture. They were working with these kinds of huge bonnets, almost probably like a white long sleeve dress, versus the other one where they're in kind of like fancy hats and black dresses. So this is probably, and you can see right here is a water jug too. So they're probably collecting, I would imagine, the wheat and stacking it up like you can see over here. Because it wouldn't come out stacked up out of the binder, it would come out like laying on the ground.
All right, and they did have fun with these cameras and posing people. So we got a little scratch in the bottom left corner, 4th of July. So knee high by the 4th of July, or then some. And we can zoom in and see the people hiding in the corn. Who do we
Again,
think that
that's
is, Jack?
Mamie, C.C. Steuber, Isabel, and we think that was one of the grandmothers. We're not sure if that was a mother of C.C. or Isabel, but she shows up in a number of pictures also.
And not sure what C.C. is sitting or riding on in the back. He's definitely elevated by some means to be in that photo. All right, so back at the house, plenty of photos taken there, especially on the porch. And I'll let Jack kind of explain who we see here.
C.C., Alex, we unfortunately don't know the others here. We do see again Isabella and Mamie, and probably Edwin, who also became a photographer himself. We kind of guess that a lot of times if you see C.C. that Edwin is taking the picture.
Don't forget the cat.
Yeah, kitty cat couldn't quite stay still, so we got a little distorted, but in general everybody else did good. The baby did good. And here's the little rascals. Again, Jack, you can kind of explain who we're seeing there.
Well, here we have Alex again, and then Paul and I talked probably about 20 minutes on her yesterday and realized she's got the same dress on again, outfit. So that's Mamie, and here we've got Edwin, and then again the others here friends, family, we just don't know. But they're sitting on the porch, and we think that's off to the side a little bit in that house.
And a couple of puppies.
One of the things that we found in our glass negatives 800 from just the Sauk Prairie area, lots and lots of dogs, all sorts of really cool different pictures. And you'll see that in the next one too, the FS Eberhart series.
And I was debating with Jack whether this was Mamie or this was Mamie, and because she seemed a little, she was the youngest, she seemed a little big in my estimation, but again, here's the earlier photo, and it is exactly the same dress, and we will see it once again. So even though they were affluent, it doesn't mean they had, 60 dresses or whatever. That was probably her best dress. All right, moving into town. A picture in the Prairie du Sac school, probably around 1898, most likely an 8th grade graduation. And Jack, I don't know when you identified the person, but you can point out Mabel.
Right, the young woman here is, we're quite sure, is Mabel Bickford. And she shows up in one of August Derlis' story. It's a very sad story. Right here, we figure she's probably about in middle school, or give or take. In 1903, she and another man, Frank Schell, and another couple were on a boat right behind the village of Prairie du Sac. It's springtime, it's May, it's 2 weeks before graduation. They were told not to go out there by their parents. They did. You're high school, you're going to graduate, what are you going to do? The boat tips over. She and her boyfriend both drown, and the other two swim to shore, tell what's happened, and that became just this unbelievable tragedy story in 1903. And the newspaper at the time, which never had pictures, we actually have a copy of the 1903 newspaper, had a huge picture of both Frank. Frank Schell is buried out in the Sauk Prairie Cemetery. Mabel is in the Prairie du Sac Cemetery, and it had both their pictures on it. It also had probably almost the whole first page was a column describing each of them. So August Derlis covers that in Return to Walden West. If you ever want to read, it's called Frank and Mabel is the chapter.
So that's the unfortunate side of being in Astoria and looking at these photos. We know the rest of the story, but on this happy day, they had no idea what was coming. And possibly on the same exact day or very close, this picnic scene with probably the same kids.
There's Mabel again.
Yep. And they're on a picnic, possibly on, what is it called, James?
Round Top or
Round Top, yeah.
Sugarloaf.
So that's across the river. So A, you had to pay the toll to cross the bridge. And then B, schlep all of this stuff up there for a picnic, including heavy earthenware crocks for all of your drinks and everything you wanted to take along. A lot of these picnic photos, we'll see another one coming up, they're all holding up something, everybody grabs something. And I think this one, given the couple second rule to take these photos, that she has not been caught laughing, she is mimicking laughing for the photo, because I think she would have been blurry, so they're all carefully posed. And back in Prairie du Sac at the high school, the 1898 football team.
That was a no-brainer, probably one of the best ones. We didn't have to guess on it.
Yeah, that really helps. So.
And look at, this is actually a football at the time. Remember how they were just about like a round ball? And, well, here's another August Derlis character, actually, Lewis Cooper, who plays a part as an adult in one of his books, too, in What Return to Walden West. So this actually, for people from the Prairie du Sac, Sauk area, the old high school, which is what this is at the time in 1898, then went through a couple of different arrangements, and that became the North Grade School. So myself and everybody remembers it really as the North Grade School. So it was kindergarten through 3rd grade in the 1950s and 60s.
And if you hadn't noticed, there's 2 women photobombing up here in the windows. All right, keeping on the football theme, here's a picture of probably the same guys in action, and right outside the school would be to our left. And Jack can describe this formation.
Well, this is the infamous flying wedge, which I think was outlawed about at that time, actually, or maybe within a few years. So you have these guys here in the center, and so this ended up being quite a violent way of playing football. And I think actually Teddy Roosevelt was involved in helping ban that. What is interesting, I think, here is this is 1898. Again, you can see how round that ball is. So this is when, if you know your Wisconsin football, this is 1898 in November or October, I don't remember exactly which. Pat O'Day is a drop kicker from Australia, and he kicks a 64-yard field goal. But you literally could drop it, it would bounce up, so you would kick it on the bounce. And so you can see how that football, well, there's no forward pass really at this time yet, so that's coming in a few years. So you ran and you mowed people down, basically. I think that was the gist of it.
The house in the background is still there. We can't get this exact shot because where this is has been built up, but here's a close second. Beautiful stone house in Prairie du Sac with this block and stack masonry, if you know what that is. The large blocks interspersed with the smaller pieces of stone in between. So that's great that we can see that house in the old photo. Now, most of these photos have been from the Prairie du Sac area, but C.C. Steuber did get out and about. And does anybody recognize that building? Yeah, that's the old red brick Baraboo High School building, which was being built in 1907. Sits where the parking lot is next to what we know of as the Civic Center today. The Civic Center was built in 1927 as the new high school, and then this became a middle school before it was abandoned and then torn down in the 1970s. But here's what it looked like in a postcard at the time. And just as a side note, it came about when the old previous high school building burned down in February of 1906. And thanks to camera technology at that time, they could record events in progress. So here's the great fire of that building. And they're trying to put it out or save the building. It was a complete loss, probably much to many people's satisfaction because it really did need to be replaced. But note the people climbing, 3-story ladders trying to get books and furniture and whatever out of this building to save as much as possible. All right, back to the Steubers. They went up to the Dells. Don't know when, but I think this is called the Navy Yards. Looks like a bunch of Navy vessels kind of parked. And this is pre-Dells Dam. So this is the river Upper Dells, 17 feet or so lower than it is today. So probably a lot of what you see here, if not all of it, is underwater. So a rare shot of that. And I'll let Jack tell us.
Well, again, that would be Alex there. I'm not certain. I think at this time he's dating or he has just been married, but his wife is one of the four. I cannot tell based on the faces there. But that would have been quite a trip from Prairie du Sac up to the Dells. How many hours on horse and buggy?
Yep. All right, Jack can tell us where that is.
Well, this probably is one of my, I'm going to say this a lot, one of my favorite glass plate negatives because almost everyone seems to be, but this is a classic, I think. This is Lodi's Mill, also known in time as Koenig's Mill. You're seeing the mill hill, basically, mill bluff back here. Here's the mill pond, and again, knowing these people, now by now we start to know who these people are, so we're pretty sure. This is Mamie. This is Alex again with friends. We don't know who, but it's a beautiful place. Look at this walkway all around here, trees. And August Derleth describes this. It's almost like he was looking at this picture when he describes this, what Paul's going to read from, again, Return to Walden West.
Right, so Return to Walden West, extractions from August Derleth. 4 miles west of Sauk Prairie lay Lodi's Mill Pond. The mill pond was a place of unalloyed delight. Its setting was sylvan. Great soft maple trees lined all the east bank where we fished, and not far from the edge of the water on the west shore, rearing above the falls, rose the almost sheer hill that was always known as the Mill Bluff. The pond teemed with fish on clear days when it was possible to look to the bottom of the water. There along the bank where we fished, one could see the sunfish and bluegills in large schools, sometimes maddeningly ignoring our bait, which dangled among them from cork floating on the still surface. The pond was for many years a kind of oasis for Sauk Prairie people, and in all seasons. The pond had all the shimmering beauty of a mirage on a summer day. It seemed to be always summer there, sunlight, lily pads, yellow lilies afloat, occasional sphagnum, lotus in bloom, the trees arching over in a world of green and blue, of trees, grass, water, and sky, where if the fish were biting, I was assiduous in catching them, and if they were not, I could lie back and watch the white clouds climb over the mill bluff, mirrored in the pond, observe the birds, and listen to the music of the falls. It was a place of undeniable magic for a child, a place of such placid beauty that a little corner of the heart lies there forever. And I couldn't help myself for having a free colorization done of that slide to go along with that reading. So you are welcome.
Like the fishing?
All right, to get out to those places, you might have taken an early automobile ride. Who do we have here, Jack?
Again, this is Edwin, and we have actually, her name was Edna Groff. Now, if anybody remembers Alice Groff, Prairie du Sac librarian, that's her sister. Back here is Stella Carpenter, who became an ACLA, Stella ACLA. I don't know her. She shows up in a number of pictures, but we couldn't find a name on her. And this looks very much like the houses, several of the houses on Park Avenue in Prairie du Sac. However, we just can't get over the fact that we've got this fence here, and you've got a fence up here. This looks like it's on a hill. And it's clearly the same style, especially that side porch like that, side entrance, as at least 2 or 3 houses on Park Avenue in Prairie, but we just don't think that's Park Avenue.
I think we sent this off to somebody and they identified it as a 1905 Oldsmobile. And note that the steering is on the right side. And we'll see that in another early car, well, actually in the next photo here, another car photo. And Jack, who's this?
Well, this one is interesting. This is actually, I did check, Paul, this is Mr. and Mrs. Grant Lapham. And the woman back here is Cora Mueller, who was actually one of our family friends. She lived to be 103, and she was a 1904 graduate of Prairie du Sac. Now, I'm not much of a car person. I did check with a good friend of mine who is, so I've got a couple of things which I had no idea. First of all, here's the crank. So at this point in time, and we figure this is about a 1905
Pope Hartford.
Pope Hartman, would we say?
Hartford, yeah.
Yeah, Hartford. So the engine is actually underneath, at this point in time, the seat in the front. So there's the crank. Radiator is in here, and apparently you open up the front here, you've got tools, you've got different things, but your main engine is right here. We're talking chain drive down here, actually. So kind of like a bicycle, you know, that's running off the chain. Horn, steering wheel, of course. This is supposed to be, this parallel coming down is like the throttle. And that, I never would have known that. It looks like it's kind of a wire or some kind of, not 100% sure on that one over here, but you know, very, very, very different. I was told also that right-hand side was just kind of the way it was when they started out. And then apparently Ford in 1915 started to put the steering wheel on the other side, and everybody copied it after that. So there was no rules on steering wheels at first. They just started out on the right-hand side, which is down our passenger side, of course. The other thing, which was with the same other automobile, the back passengers have to get up from behind. There's actually kind of a step there. You can't see it here, but there's a door that opens up from the back. So they had to get in from the back side. They couldn't crawl in through the front, or there's no side door on that.
And of course, we note that this,
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead.
No, you got it.
Oh, that this glass plate, as you can see, was cracked off and damaged, so that's how fragile these are.
I forgot to mention, at this time I was told these are kerosene lamps, literally, that you had to light when you went out. Later on, I think there's the acetylene kind of a gas that they used, but at this point in time, around 1905 with this vehicle, it was a kerosene lamp that you lit.
Is that a light snow on the roof?
I don't think so. I think there's too many leaves on the trees and it's just kind of washed, the roof is just kind of washed out. I must admit a few of these I did enhance, brightness levels or whatnot, just so they were easier to see. I know as great as all the outdoor shots were, there are a few indoor shots, and it would seem easier to take because you weren't dealing with mud and outdoor conditions, but the lighting levels inside were such that it was far more difficult to get a decent shot inside. And again, you can see the damage that happens to these plates when they're not stored exactly properly. We don't have any idea where this is or who these people are, unfortunately, but it's a great look at turn of the 20th century interior. So you see all of the classic, lots of patterns. If this was in color, it would probably be quite shocking. Pictures hung from picture rails, not nailed into the wall. Every little good thing on display. And we noticed hanging from the kerosene lamp, so this is probably a rural house, kerosene lamp up above, and then below it somebody has taken what looks like an incandescent light bulb, probably burned out, and turned it into a little craft project and made a little hot air balloon, art piece that's now hanging from its, counterpart up top that's still going strong, kerosene forever, I have another interior shot. I'll let Jack explain this one.
Well, this is a switchboard. It was actually called the Troy and Honey Creek Telephone Company in Prairie du Sac, located in exactly on the spot now where the Ruth Culver Library is downtown. And we figured, well, you can't see it so much here, but when close up, these are Christmas cards up here, so we figure it's around Christmas time. And this was the local telephone company and the operators at that time, with all the interesting plugs and everything else that are going. Oh, this is kind of neat over here. This is a gas lamp, but what you can see right here is actually a mirror. So that must have been throwing light up against that. And you can kind of see that here where that's bouncing off there. So maybe that was for some kind of close-up work. I don't know, but that definitely is a concave mirror up here.
A book identified this as Edna Walzer and Maisie Kaiser, presumably left and right. Maisie got the good chair with the lumbar support there on the right, and Edna got the bring in your rocker to work day chair there on the left. So still learning about ergonomics. All right, now one of the tour de force pictures from the C.C. Steuber collection. I'll let Jack take it away.
Well, again, this was an interesting picture. When we first saw it, we figured there was twins in here. And then we started looking and looking, and we noticed this guy's foot's gone. So putting that together, plus this kind of an interesting vertical line here, and looking closer at, I'm not sure if it's a her or he, but the baby, they're the same baby. So this was one of the first of many turning out, with different photographers though, of the split kind of a screen where you would basically, when you're exposing here in the camera, you could cut off one side, take the picture, then come over and cut off the other side, take another picture, so you have a double exposure there. And I'm not sure what you'd call this thing, but you've got springs here in this thing, so this is kind of a bouncy.
And these are those springs when the older children grabbed this spring and then it went up and down. They screamed in terror as their skin was pinched in there. But yeah, if you look carefully, you can see how the bookcase disappears, and we've got this very
we
clever-
did identify him as Edwin, also Edwin Steuber later on now. So now we've gone into the adult world basically with the, with the kids.
All right, and one last one from the Ed Steuber collection. Again, very rare, an interior shot, a highly staged shot, you know, that's meant to evoke some fun. So a lot going on here. We know this is the Steuber farmhouse that we saw much earlier because somebody that lived in this house in the 50s when it was rented recognized this wallpaper. Still there, still there. And I'm going to zoom in and Jack can talk about what we're seeing in some of the picture.
Well, up here we've got some of our collars, which are stiff. What's that material called?
Celluloid collars.
Your basic lamp again with your holder on it. This is hard to see, but that's a matchbox. Oh, there you go. Thank you. And actually a match on top of it. It's 3:34 in the morning.
Or in the afternoon, because this was taken during the day.
What did we say on that one, Paul? I forget now.
Yeah, this looks like a glass object. We're not quite, it almost looks like it might have bristle brushes on the bottom, not sure what that is. And then behind the clock, box is open with a mirrored interior showing the back of the clock and I think a shaving mug laying in the box.
Right.
So that's the beauty of, they would have been able to print these, you know, to a manageable size, maybe as large as 8 by 10 or something like that. But with our modern technology, of course, we can zoom in on all of this delicious detail.
Well, and there's his tie lying down there, so.
Yeah, when we go back,
Yeah,
under
here we
the
go.
bed, of course, there's the bathroom accommodations right there. All right, we're going to transfer to our next photographer who knew C.C. Steuber. C.C. Steuber was the older of the two, born in 1855. And the other man we'll talk about is F.S. Eberhart. But as they were going through these slides, they started noticing that they are together, the families are together, and they are family friends. So Jack, you can kind of describe who's...
Well, I'll go from right to left because we know these people. There's Edwin again, Mamie, mother, looking off to the side for some reason. Cece, and then we go to the we go to the Eberhart. So we have, this is F.S. Eberhart right here, another mustache. We've got Lucy, his wife, and then down here we have, why isn't it working? There we go. We have Gertrude, and Gertrude was born in 1899, so we were giving her about 3 years of age there or so. So we're talking probably about a 1902 picture. So we know the Steubers and the Eberharts were friends more than probably just acquaintances.
Yep, and
again, a few other people here we just don't know, and a dog.
Right, and there's the dress, the famous dress.
Right.
Okay, F.S. Eberhart, Frank S. Eberhart, was not born in Sauk County. He was born in Iowa in 1870, as was Lucy, his wife. She was 8 years younger. They were married in 1898 and moved to Wisconsin in time for Gertrude to be born in April of 1899. We believe this could be their wedding photo. It was taken in Iowa. So not sure what brought him to the Prairie du Sac area. He was a jeweler, first and foremost, but also an optician. He sold souvenirs. You can see all kinds of stuff in this photo. Jack can point some of it out.
Well, your different plates, different things that you had. A lot of times on the back, we've got a couple of these. A lot of times on the back of the plates, there would be F.S. Eberhart on there. So that was kind of a advertisement plate. In addition, eyeglasses. He was also an optician. You know, so I don't know what kind of training in those days, but he did some optician work too. So this is he at his front desk, and he'd be or workspace, and then he'd be looking out into the main street here, out the main window.
And what looks like all kinds of pocket watches in this case behind him. So he had a couple of locations. He rented perhaps at first, and then in 1903 he built a purpose-built store for himself on Water Street, which is here at the left. You can see his name at the top. It's kind of rare. And of course a large, looks like a clock sign out here F.S. Eberhart City jeweler and in the storefront there. Fortunately, this building does still exist, as does the one next to it. They're the only two on that stretch of road that exist yet. And they lived upstairs. I had the store downstairs and lived upstairs. And Jack can tell about how the F.S. Eberhart's glass plate negatives came to be.
Well, this is quite a story. In the 1960s, this was actually a kind of a dime store, a variety store. And the electricians, I've heard at the time, were working up in the attic. They're up there with insulation and stuff, and they found all of these glass plate negatives, like stacks of them, well over 100, 150. And so they got a hold of a gentleman by the name of the people that owned it got a hold of a gentleman by the name of Denman Kramer, who used to be manager at the Prairie du Sac Dam. They gave these glass plate negatives to them because, like, you can, basically you can pretty much see a lot of times scenes on here, and they could tell by looking at the negative that these were pictures of the dam. And I think people sort of knew that anyway, based on there were actual photographs out at the dam of these glass plate negatives. So these were given to Denman Kramer. A long story, basically. He had these for years. One of our SPAHS members by the name of Robert France years ago printed those, actually on the old-fashioned, literally printed all these glass plate negatives. A few years later, we were loaned these again at the museum, and Verlin Miller also, but this time he scanned them. So we have all these digital images. Denman took the original collection, and those are now in the State Historical Society. So if you go to the Wisconsin Historical website and you look up, if you go to the images part there, just do a search on F.S. Eberhart, and you'll come up with about 126, I think, photos there that they actually have that they've scanned, and these are all literally that came from the upstairs there in that dime store in the 1960s.
All right, and as they started scanning these in 2012, I believe, this was the first image that came up on the screen and captured their attention.
And once again, we had no idea who these people were at this time. We saw them, and as time goes on, we get to know them. But at this point, we have no idea. This is Lucy, and this is F.S. and Gertrude.
And here's a picture of adorable little Gertrude on the right with a couple of her friends. And I'm not sure what house this is. I don't think this is the Steuber house. But note the contraption that the friend is in. Little Emily has got a hand-painted sweet ride here with solid wood wheels and lots of paint on there. So a wealthier kid's toy for sure. Another picture of adorable Gertrude with a puppy, maybe about 3 years old, and a little bit older. Note these board sidewalks too, which were all over the place. Now this was not a glass plate negative from this collection, but the family of F.S. Eberhart later sent pictures of the family, including this one of Gertrude, which was a Christmas card greeting. Again, Gertrude on the right with the dog, and some spectacular damage to this plate. You can see parts of the emulsion. So these were dry plates that you would order in the mail with the coating on them, but and then take your photos and get them developed. But you can see where parts of that emulsion coating have turned over and created all these fun effects on this photo. Another picture front on of the F.S. Eberhart store and residence with F.S. and Gertrude standing there in the entrance, and we can zoom in and just about see what's going on in the store window there. Lots of dishes on that side, and on the other side were comb and brush sets. So he was definitely selling a variety of products, trying to make a living in Prairie du Sac. Nearby was the Prairie du Sac Depot, This was the end of the line, coming from Dane County across into Sauk City first and then to Prairie du Sac. Later this was extended up into the Badger powder plant to the north, but this was kind of the end of the line. There was a couple of grain elevators and whatnot north of this, but this is right on the river. You can just see vague hints of downtown Prairie du Sac there on the left, much further up in elevation, because this was as low as possible to keep the elevation grade down for the railroad. And this is roughly where that is today. The Great Sauk Trail running along the old rail bed there in Prairie du Sac and Sauk City. And that's the back end of the Ruth Culver Library, the red building there in the distance. And the village has done quite a bit of work here making this Riverside Park. FS eventually had a car. Don't know what make or model this is, and this again is from his family that sent pictures back later, but just to show that he did get out and about. He went all the way out to Whitwin and took a picture of the one-room country school out there. So a nice shot of that. And another picnic, this time by F.S. Eberhart. Jack can kind of explain.
Yeah, again, this was probably very early in on our scanning, so we really are starting now to figure out this might be somebody that's taken a picture. I've looked at this for 13 years until yesterday. I've been looking for this all the time. I've never seen the pull before, the pull cord. You can
There's
see
the
how
pull.
his forefinger is down there, but we never could find it until it came up on this screen yesterday. So he's obviously manipulating the picture. And so there's Frank, there's Lucy again, and quite sure that that's Gertrude behind there. But we've got another pose where people are holding up their food, and you've got your crock over here. But we've got a lot of other pictures too by different people, and they just went out and threw a blanket or a sheet down, and that was their picnic. We've got oodles of those kind here where there's no picnic tables, just down on the ground.
And take your 20-pound earthenware jug of lemonade or whatever.
So this will be on the south side of the Eberhart building. There actually was a little grounds, open grounds there at the time. We have again Lucy, and unfortunately we don't know anybody else, but this really is a Hats picture. That was the, yeah, this ain't working. So there was a millinery, actually two buildings, millinery business, two buildings over from our museum. Quite sure those hats were probably more than likely made there. So, and a step ladder, I'm assuming, behind there.
This one's labeled Forester Team of Prairie du Sac by FS or FSE in 1908, and I was like, Jack, what's the forestry team?
Well, they are getting ready to march, I guess, because we do have different parade pictures of that time period, and we do see this actually is a modern woodman group here, and they would march in parades. These axes, we actually have a couple of these axes in our archive. They're not a real axe, they're kind of like a soft sort of a metal of sorts, but they would dress up, and here we have, of course, this is at the north end of Prairie du Sac, but this time we're talking about dirt streets yet.
The streets were either dusty or muddy. They were never perfect, so.
Yeah. Picture of Lucy with a rifle, and again in this green space outside of their business place. Over here, if people know Prairie du Sac, it's the now it's the Methodist Church. Excuse me, it used to be the Evangelical Concordia Church. So you can kind of see that in the background to give you a view. So they're on Water Street here in Prairie du Sac with this picture again. We just called this picture SPAHS pipes. We had no idea what's going on here other than are they drying them out? Is this a way to hang them up or just display? But no idea who that is, but they're holding up somebody's pipes. And Lucy again.
Shotgun wedding, I think. But it's Lucy. This is not F.S. Eberhart, we don't
No.
think. So hopefully it's a brother. because he's awfully familiar with her. So again, a staged shot. So they were having a little fun with their cameras. Every once in a while, again, he would put a full-on title and date. So this is wonderful. We know that this is the horse sale at Prairie du Sac, March 4th, 1911. And with that information, Jack was able to find...
This actually came from one of our newspapers in our archives, so there was quite a few of these horse sales going on at the time. And this location is right behind the actual Eberhart building, so it's on what's called 3rd Street in Prairie du Sac. So we're looking kind of north here, and today this would be the Hanson's IGA, and over here would be the Eagle Inn. And so you've got all your different people here, and this is a view of how it looks today. Here we're pretty sure, well, this is not,
Sorry.
we're pretty sure that this is J.S. Tripp. So
Jedediah S. Tripp, where the Tripp Museum is named after. Banker, real estate. Tripp Memorial, UW, that's him, that's his money. They're wearing the good hats. Everybody else has got kind of a workaday hat, but as I should have pointed out in an earlier picnic photo, everybody is wearing a hat. You would have been considered half naked if you were not wearing a hat at this time outside. And again, here is that same location today.
So here's the actual Highway 60 bridge for you that maybe don't know Prairie du Sac, and Eagle Inn and IGA grocery store. This is a good picture here. It's the beginning of the laying the water pipe, so the water works system in Prairie du Sac. And it's actually, one of the beautiful things about S.F. Eberhart is I think his printing, and he almost on all of his photos are putting those kinds of things. Later on the dam photos, he even does a better job, but he does a nice job of giving us what's going on here. This is kind of a trench machine here that it kind of went around and around like this with these big scoops, it looks like on here, that we're pulling out the dirt. So this was not, it's being cleaned out by hand, but it's being dug by this machine that's going down the street. So you're facing south. And again, this isn't working.
Oh, sorry, here's F.S. Eberhart's
Right.
sign and store right here to the side. That was 1913. No, 1911. Sorry, no, 13. It says 13. That same year, or actually a few years earlier, this news hit the Sauk County News in Prairie du Sac. Will be dam. The dam had been built in the Dells in 1908, and with good success, they decided to do it again, except in a much different area, not much different building conditions at the Prairie du Sac area. And F.S. Eberhart really went to town and photographed the entire process. Jack, do we know if he was paid to do that, or just think he was doing it?
Well, we think he was. We've always heard that F.S. Eberhart was the official dam photographer, and he took over 225 pictures from start to finish on the dam. And this actually, as you can see, the beautiful thing on these, we don't have to figure out what's going on as far as the actual scene. So line of power dam looking west, copyright F.S. Eberhart, PDS, #1. So that's 1911, and that actually would be in January of 1911 they started this, so you can see snow and everything. So you're looking at west, you're looking to the west, and that's Dam Heights at the time. So you're looking at the river, basically, and you can see these little white that Paul is going through. I can't even use this anymore.
There's little X's he's scratched onto the plate to indicate where the dam would be built.
So he's standing on what is in currently the golf course in Prairie du Sac, Lake Wisconsin golf course, looking across the river.
So again, there are well over 200 photos, and we'll just look at a few here, but again, carefully annotated for us. Some reason he did this one twice. Maybe he wasn't happy with how close this was on the edge down here, and he did it again, but general view of the powerhouse. This truly was the Hoover Dam, the Great Pyramids of Giza, whatever you want, of our area. This was a monumental piece of work that they did here. on this muddy bottom stretch of the Wisconsin River. God knows why they were possessed to put it here, but they did. And the Dells was stone bottom. They just built a cofferdam, let the water drain, started building from the ground, this rock up. But here, not the case. This was all mud bottom. And so there's a lot going on. And the first thing to be done was, Jack?
Well, they had to figure out, in fact, we've heard that several engineers did not know, didn't feel you could build a dam there, basically. You're talking about a sandy bottom all along. There's nothing to tie into on the sides. So this gentleman by the name of Daniel Mead engineering firm, I think they're still in Madison actually, he came up with this idea of taking pilings. Now these are basically telephone posts, pine telephone posts. You could look at it that way. I've heard two different figures, 12,000 and 15,000. So these were nailed. Over here we have what we call a pile driver. And these actually would pound down these telephone poles into the river and go down through the sand to the bedrock. So these things, you're seeing the tops of them basically. We'll see some more here. But over here, we'll see in the next scene, all the telephone poles, pilings, look how close together they are. They're sticking out of the top of the water. So we're in a cofferdam here. So basically most of the water is pumped out. You have a rail system up here. They've got concrete up at the top. These are chutes. So the whole focus on this is they're building the foundation for the dam. So they've got all these thousands of pilings in the river close together like that. Down comes the concrete. We've got other pictures that we don't have here showing the men down here. They're in boots, they're up to their knees in concrete, and they're basically spreading that all over. And when that solidifies, you've got the foundation for the whole dam going across there. So that was the genius of Mead's approach toward building this dam.
And I believe I've heard this is the first time a little narrow gauge rail system was set up to deliver concrete for a project like this. Up in the Dells, it was all done by wagon and wheelbarrow and manpower to get it in there. So this was an improvement on that to be sure. And they used rail to get everything in there and to build it. They also had to build the dam. They had to build the powerhouse next to it. So there he's noting first floor of powerhouse, generator room at the dam. This took several years to accomplish. They had to survive a washout condition early on, a flood that just about demolished everything.
Well, the other thing too is that there was no winter season to take off. They worked 12 months around the year. So you can see, again, a lot of our other pictures show a lot of things going on in the winter time.
So here, March 11th, 1914, nearing the end, it was designed with a lock so that they highly expected boat traffic to be able to go upstream. I don't think this was used a whole lot, but it was there right from the get-go. And so that's March 11th, 1914, and towards the end, I think this might be the last picture, 228.
Right.
August 19th, 1915, showing this absolutely monumental work, which of course still exists in its entirety today.
So yeah, they started generating power in September of 2014, right, 1914. However, the dam was not completely finished until August of 1915. So that, we figure, is the final picture of F.F. Eberhart's dam construction. And I don't know of any other kind of construction pictures like this. Do you, Paul, that start from finish like
no,
this? No,
it's quite an extraordinary. I mean,
Pretty
even the
unique.
state capitol, I don't think has, which was built at the same time, has any record close to this during its construction. So really quite extraordinary. This is August 19th, 1915. Something happened just a year earlier in August of 1914 that really affected F.S. Eberhart, and that was the love of his life. Lucy died in August of 1914. So the pictures all seemed to stop right around that time, and he was able to get himself to take those last pictures of the dam. But and the glass plate negative era was also kind of ending. It lasted into about the 1920s, although I have heard there are still now or very recently still uses for glass plate negatives, but very specialized. So she died, and Gertrude went off to school. FS was alone. He did remarry a woman named Mary, and I think he died in the 1950s. They married between 1920 and 1930, so it did take a few years to get around to finding a new spouse. But we like this photo. It's obviously not a glass plate negative. It's much later, but just shows that these people lived through extraordinary times from, late Victorian conditions into what most of us would consider the modern age, with flight and cars and all that kind of stuff, color TVs. So that is the end of our look at the glass plate negatives etched in glass. I want to point out that both of our organizations are on the web. You can go to either very easy to memorize websites and look at more photos. We've got about 20,000 photos on our website you can take a look at. Go to Jack's website, check that out. Check out the Trip Heritage Museum, which is right downtown Prairie du Sac, across from what all of us remember as the Blue Spoon. And it's a wonderful museum, and we encourage you to join both of our organizations. These stories and these happenings where glass plate negatives are found and given to volunteers to scan only happen because of membership support, other donations that help us keep the lights on and present programs like this for you. So